There is a version of you, right now, sitting somewhere on this exact same planet, in an alternate stream of the same life you're living, who is already rich. Not lucky, not born into it, not scheming, hustling, grinding 18 hours a day until their body gives out. Rich the way a river is wet. Rich as a default state. And the only difference between that version of you and the one watching this video right now isn't the economy, it isn't your job title, it isn't even your bank balance today. It's 4 pounds of gray tissue sitting behind your eyes, running a program you never chose, that you've never once looked at directly. Joseph Murphy, a minister and a doctor of psychology who spent decades studying the mechanics of the human mind, discovered something in the mid-20th century that most people still refuse to believe today. Money is not a math problem. Money is a mirror. It reflects back to you, with brutal, mechanical precision, exactly what you believe about yourself at the deepest, most unreachable layer of your mind. So, if you've ever worked hard and stayed stuck, if you've ever watched someone less qualified than you sail past you into wealth while you did everything right, if you've ever felt that invisible ceiling that gets you exactly this far and never further, this video is going to explain, in plain, practical language, exactly what's happening beneath the surface and exactly what to do about it. This isn't hype. This isn't a manifestation video with sparkles and vague promises. This is a full breakdown of the actual mechanics Murphy described. The psychology, the imagery, the daily practice, distilled into something you can start using tonight. Welcome to Mindful Scape. Decode your mind, rewire your habits, unlock your potential. Let's begin. Part 1. The 2 minds you're already living with. Before we can talk about money at all, we need to talk about the machine that decides who gets it and who doesn't. And that machine is not the economy. It's you, split into 2 very different operators. Murphy's entire body of work rests on one foundational idea. You don't have one mind. You have 2, running in the same skull, almost never agreeing with each other. The first is the conscious mind. This is the you that's listening to this sentence right now. It reasons, it compares prices, it makes budgets, it reads books about investing. It's the captain standing on the deck of the ship, hands on the wheel, absolutely certain it's steering. The second is the subconscious mind. And here's the part that changes everything once you actually absorb it. The subconscious isn't below the conscious mind in importance. It's underneath it in the way an engine room is underneath the captain's deck. The captain thinks he's driving the ship, but the engine room is what actually moves it. And the engine room doesn't care what the captain wants. It only responds to orders it has already been given, sometimes decades ago, sometimes by someone else entirely. Here's an example that has nothing to do with money, on purpose, because it makes the mechanism easier to see. Picture a woman named Elena, a fictional case, but built from a pattern therapists see constantly, who was taught to swim as a child by an instructor who threw kids into the deep end without warning. She survived. She even became a competent swimmer later in life, technically. But every single time she stands at the edge of a pool as an adult, her stomach tightens, her palms sweat, her breath goes shallow, for no reason her conscious mind can explain. She knows she can swim. Her conscious mind has all the facts. But her subconscious mind isn't running on facts. It's running on an old command. Water at the edge of a ledge means danger. And until that command is directly addressed, no amount of just relax, you know how to swim, will override it. Money works exactly the same way. Somewhere in your childhood, a command got installed. Maybe nobody said it directly. Maybe it was absorbed from watching a parent's shoulders tense every time a bill arrived. Maybe it was a single sentence repeated at dinner tables. Money doesn't grow on trees. We're not the kind of people who rich people are greedy. Maybe it was watching someone you loved work themselves into exhaustion for a paycheck that never seemed to stretch far enough, and quietly concluding, without ever saying it out loud, this is just how it is for people like us.
None of that was a decision you made. It was a program that got written into you before you had the tools to question it. And your conscious mind, the captain on the deck, has been trying to steer toward abundance ever since, while the engine room, running on 20-year-old orders, keeps quietly steering the ship right back to shore. This is why willpower alone so often fails. You can want more money with your whole conscious mind and still sabotage it, procrastinate on the opportunity, undercharge for your work, or mysteriously forget to follow up on the deal. Not because you're lazy, but because some deeper layer of you has never actually agreed that more money is safe. Murphy's core claim, the one this entire philosophy is built on, is this: the subconscious mind does not evaluate whether a belief is true. It only accepts what is impressed upon it with feeling, and then works day and night to make external reality match that impression.
Your subconscious isn't a judge weighing evidence. It's more like fertile soil. It doesn't ask whether a seed is a weed or a rose before it grows it. It just grows whatever gets planted, with whatever emotional intensity was behind the planting. Which means the question was never, how do I make more money? The real question is, what has already been planted in me about money? And how do I plant something different? Part 2. The inheritance nobody talks about. Let's slow down here, because this next part is uncomfortable, and it should be. Most people think of inheritance as something that happens after a death. A house, some savings, maybe a piece of jewelry passed down. But there's a second inheritance that happens while everyone involved is still alive, and it's far more powerful than any amount of cash. The emotional inheritance of belief. Consider a man. We'll call him Daniel, another composite figure representative of a pattern seen again and again, who grew up in a household where his father worked 6 days a week at a job he despised, came home exhausted, and said some version of the same sentence almost every week. That's just how it is. You work, you pay the bills, and if you're lucky, there's something left over. Daniel grew up, went to university, got a good job. Objectively, on paper, a success story. But by his mid-30s, he noticed something strange. Every single time his income started to climb, a raise, a bonus, a good year, something happened. An unexpected car repair, a friend who needed a loan he never got back, a sudden urge to buy something expensive he didn't need, right at the moment his savings account crossed a certain threshold. To Daniel's conscious mind, these looked like a string of bad luck. To anyone watching the pattern from the outside, it looked like something else entirely. A subconscious thermostat. Think of a thermostat on a wall. You can want the room to be 28 degrees all you like, but if the thermostat is set to 22, the moment the temperature creeps up past that number, the air conditioning kicks in and pulls it back down. It doesn't matter how much you want the higher number. The system was built to maintain the set point it was given. Daniel's subconscious had a financial set point, inherited almost word for word from his father's sentence. You work, you survive, and if you're lucky, something small is left over. Every time his actual income tried to rise above that emotional set point, his own mind, not fate, not the universe, not bad luck, generated a reason to pull it back down to the temperature it recognized as home. This is the mechanism Murphy spent his career trying to make people see. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You return to the level of your beliefs. Every time. And here's the part that should give you real hope instead of despair. If a belief was installed, it can be reinstalled. The subconscious has no loyalty to the old program. It's not attached to poverty or struggle. It's simply obedient. It will grow abundance with exactly the same mechanical willingness it grew scarcity the moment you give it a new emotionally charged command, repeated with the same consistency the old one had. That's not a metaphor. That's the actual mechanism. And it's why the rest of this video isn't going to be inspiration. It's going to be a method.
Part 3. The Law of Assumption, explained without the mysticism. Here's where a lot of people get lost, because this next idea gets thrown around so loosely online that it's lost most of its meaning. You've probably heard some version of you create your own reality, or just believe it and it'll happen. Said like that, it sounds like magic. It isn't. It's closer to engineering. Murphy called it the law of assumption, and stripped of the spiritual language, here's what it actually describes. Your subconscious mind doesn't just store beliefs passively. It actively organizes your perception, your behavior, and this is the part people skip, your decisions around whatever you have assumed to be true about yourself. Here's a grounded example. Imagine two people, both laid off from the same company on the same day. Same severance package, same job market, same qualifications on paper. The first person's internal assumption, running quietly underneath every thought, is, I'm the kind of person who lands on his feet. Something good is already forming. I just haven't seen it yet. Watch what that assumption actually does, mechanically. It changes his posture in interviews. He sits like someone who has options, not someone begging for a lifeline. It changes which opportunities he even notices, because the brain's filtering system, called the reticular activating system, starts flagging relevant information that matches the assumption. A mentioned opening here, a casual comment from an old contact there. It changes the tone of his outreach emails. None of that is magic. That's assumption translated into behavior, and behavior translated into outcome. The second person's internal assumption is, I always get the short end of the stick. This is just my luck. And that assumption does its own quiet work, a slight defensiveness in interviews, an unconscious tendency to undersell himself, a habit of only applying to safe roles, far below his actual ceiling, because some part of him doesn't expect to be chosen for more. Same layoff, same market. Radically different subconscious instructions running underneath. And 6 months later, radically different outcomes that both people will describe using the word luck. This is what Murphy meant when he said the subconscious mind is like rich, fertile ground, and thought is the seed. It doesn't judge the seed, it grows it. Assumption isn't wishful thinking. It's the operating instruction your subconscious hands to your behavior, your attention, and your decisions dozens of times a day, mostly outside your awareness. Which means the practical question becomes very simple to state, even though it takes real work to answer honestly. What am I currently assuming about my relationship with money, underneath the words I say out loud? Because most people say, I want to be wealthy out loud, while the assumption running quietly underneath is money is hard to come by, or people like me don't get rich, or if I have a lot, I'll lose it, so better not to have too much. The subconscious doesn't listen to the sentence you say. It listens to the sentence you believe. Part 4. The technique. How Murphy said to actually do this. So how do you change an assumption that was installed before you had language for it? Murphy's answer, distilled down from decades of counseling people out of exactly this kind of stuck pattern, comes down to 3 practical mechanisms. Not affirmation poster fluff. 3 specific tools, each targeting a different layer of the mind. The first tool is repetition with feeling, not repetition alone. This is the most misunderstood part of subconscious work. People repeat phrases like, I am wealthy, I am wealthy, I am wealthy, in a flat, disconnected voice, while their body is tense and their actual feeling underneath is doubt. and then they wonder why nothing changes. Here's why that fails. The subconscious doesn't respond to words. It responds to the emotional charge carried by the words. A sentence repeated with real feeling, even quietly, even just a handful of times a day, moves through the mental filter far faster than 100 repetitions set on autopilot.
Think of the difference between a stranger telling you you're gonna be fine in a bored tone versus someone who loves you deeply, looking you in the eyes, saying the exact same sentence with complete conviction. Same words, wildly different penetration. Your subconscious reacts the same way. It's not counting repetitions, it's measuring conviction. The practical version. Instead of a long list of affirmations recited quickly, Murphy consistently pointed people toward a small number of statements, repeated slowly, with the feeling already imagined as true. Not, I hope this becomes true, but the felt sense of it already being so, even for 30 seconds at a time.
The second tool is the state right before sleep. This is arguably the single most practical, science-adjacent piece of the entire method, and it's the one most people skip because it seems too simple to matter. In the minutes right before you fall asleep, and right as you're waking up, your brain naturally shifts into a slower rhythm. The conscious, analytical, skeptical gatekeeper relaxes its grip, and the subconscious becomes far more receptive to whatever thought is held during that window. This is why the thought you fall asleep on matters so much more than people realize. If you spend those final waking minutes replaying a stressful conversation, running numbers on bills, rehearsing an argument, that's the emotional instruction that gets impressed on the mind right as the door to the subconscious opens widest.
Murphy's recommendation was almost embarrassingly simple. In that drowsy window before sleep, deliberately hold a specific felt image, not a vague wish, but a specific scene of the financial reality you want, as if it's already true. Not, I want money. A scene. The feeling of opening an account and seeing a number that used to feel impossible. The physical sensation of paying something off completely without a flicker of anxiety. The tone of your own voice, calm and unhurried, describing your life to a friend in a way that used to feel out of reach.
The specificity matters because vague wishes don't give the subconscious anything to actually grow. I want to be rich is a fog. A precise, felt scene is a seed with a shape. The third tool is what Murphy called acting as if, but the mechanism underneath it is worth explaining properly because it's not about pretending. This one gets misunderstood as fake it till you make it, which sounds hollow and a little dishonest. That's not quite it. It's closer to this. Your subconscious mind takes cues from your behavior, not only your words. If your daily actions consistently communicate scarcity, hoarding out of fear, flinching at every expense, speaking about money only with dread, you are handing your subconscious fresh evidence for the old belief every single day, even while your mouth is saying affirmations.
So, acting as if means making small, honest, congruent choices that quietly tell your subconscious a different story. Not reckless spending. The opposite of financially responsible thinking has nothing to do with this method. It means, for example, handling the money you do have with the calm, unhurried respect of someone who expects more of it, rather than the tight, anxious grip of someone terrified there won't be enough. It means budgeting from a place of, I am directing this well, rather than, I am barely surviving this. Same action, tracking your spending, completely different subconscious instruction, depending on the internal state behind it. Part 5. A grounded case study. What this actually looks like over time. Let's put all three tools together in a single composite story, because ideas like this only become real once you can see them applied. Picture a woman named Priya, another composite drawn from patterns seen across many real accounts of this kind of inner shift. Working a stable but unfulfilling job, carrying a quiet background belief she never examined. People like me work hard and get by. That's the ceiling. She didn't say this out loud. If you'd asked her, she'd have said she wanted to be wealthy, of course. But underneath, she'd never actually questioned the assumption running the show. She starts, almost skeptically, with the smallest possible version of the method. Each night, instead of scrolling her phone until her eyes get heavy, she spends 2 or 3 minutes, not more, picturing one specific scene. Herself checking a bank balance and feeling calm instead of anxious. Not a specific number, just the feeling of calm where dread used to sit. For the first couple of weeks, nothing happens. This is normal and worth saying plainly because most people quit right here. The subconscious doesn't operate on a deadline. A belief that took 20 years to install rarely dissolves in 20 days. But something subtler starts shifting first. Not the bank account, but her behavior around money. She notices she's less reactive when a bill arrives. She catches herself, mid-sentence, about to say, "I could never afford that," and pauses instead of finishing the old script automatically. Around the 2-month mark, small external shifts start showing up. The kind that are easy to dismiss as coincidence if you're not paying attention. A colleague mentions a freelance opportunity in passing that Priya, 6 months earlier, would have talked herself out of even considering. She says yes, instead of instantly assuming she's not qualified. It's a small win. It brings in a modest amount of extra income. But more importantly, it becomes new evidence. Proof her subconscious can point to that reinforces the new assumption instead of the old one. This is the part Murphy emphasized again and again, and it's the part most manifestation content quietly leaves out. The external world doesn't shift first. The internal evidence shifts first, and the external world follows the trail that evidence creates. It's not instant, it's cumulative. Each small congruent action, the calm instead of the panic, the yes instead of the automatic no, the honest engagement with money instead of the flinch, is another seed in soil that was, for years, only ever fed one type of crop. Part 6. Gratitude as a mechanism, not a platitude. There's one more piece worth explaining properly, because it gets reduced to a greeting card sentiment so often that people miss what it's actually doing. Murphy placed enormous weight on gratitude, not as a nice feeling to have, but as a functional signal to the subconscious mind. Here's the mechanism. Gratitude for what you currently have tells your subconscious unmistakably that what you have is safe to keep and safe to grow. Resentment or anxiety about what you lack does the opposite. It tells your subconscious that money, or the lack of it, is a source of danger, and the mind organizes itself, quite logically from its own perspective, to protect you from danger by keeping you cautious, small, and underreaching. Think about which of those two internal states you'd rather hand the wheel to. A frightened driver grips the wheel, overcorrects, brakes too hard, avoids the open road entirely. A calm, grateful driver who trusts the vehicle drives further, takes reasonable risks, actually gets somewhere. Gratitude, in this framework, isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about giving your subconscious evidence of safety, so it stops steering you defensively. So, if you take nothing else from the last 30-some minutes, take this. Tonight, in the few minutes before sleep, don't reach for your phone. Instead, hold one specific felt scene, not a vague wish, a precise image of your financial life exactly as you want it to feel. Not the number, the feeling. Calm where there was dread, ease where there was tightness. Hold it gently, without straining, for even just a minute or two, and let it be the last thing your mind touches before it drifts off. Do that tomorrow night, and the night after. Not because it's magic,
because it's mechanical. You are quite literally giving new instructions to the engine room in the one window of the day it's most willing to listen. The people who end up wealthy aren't the ones with the most information about money. There are more books, more videos, more courses about wealth available right now than at any point in human history, and most people who consume them stay exactly where they were. The difference was never information. It was always which instructions were running underneath, unseen, making all the practical decisions look inevitable. Change the instructions. The results, on their own timeline, follow. If this breakdown gave you a new way to see your own relationship with money, subscribe to Mindful Scape. We go deep into the subconscious mind, prosperity psychology, and mindset reprogramming every single week. And if you want to sit with this a little longer, drop a comment below with the one belief about money you suspect you inherited without ever choosing it. Sometimes just naming it out loud is the first seed. Decode your mind, rewire your habits, unlock your potential. I'll see you in the next one.